This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The meeting is called to order at this time, 7:07 p.m. on April 8, 2008. The board consists of 5 members and 2 alternates. An alternate takes full part in discussions of the board and becomes a voting member in the absence or conflict of interest of a regular member. Present this evening are members Betty Hollow, Roger Gruser, myself, Muriel Frederick, and John Golsey. We are expecting our alternate, Michelle Draybold, very shortly, I hope. Also present this evening are Zoning Administrator Steve Pearson and Paul Eschenbacher, our acting secretary. The board operates according to the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator will cite the specifics of the refusal of the case. The appellant or a representative then will state the case for granting the appeal. Testimony next will be taken from those who support granting the appeal, then those who wish to speak in general comment, and those who support denial of the appeal. Following all testimonies, the board will receive concluding remarks from the appellant. Discussion from the floor then will be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. Under Athens City Code, Section 230703B, the board has the power to grant such variances from the code as will not be contrary to the public interest, so that the spirit of the code shall be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. Athens City Code Section 23091010C requires that variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the evidence provided to it that each and every one of the following 6 criteria are met. Practical difficulty or undue hardship. There must exist a practical difficulty or undue hardship caused by exceptional circumstances pertaining to the specific piece of property. Exceptional circumstances. There must exist exceptional circumstances or conditions applying to the property or its intended use that do not in general apply to properties in the same zoning district. The third is preservation of equal property rights. It must be determined that literal interpretation of the code would deprive the appellants of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same vicinity, while granting the variance would not convey a special privilege. Number 4, a minimum variance. It must be determined that the variance is the minimum required to make reasonable use of the property. The 5th, an absence of detriment. It must be determined that the granting of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties, nor materially impair the purposes of the code or the public interest. And the last, number 6, not of a general nature. The variance sought must not be of a general or recurring nature such that the situation would more reasonably be handled by changing the law. When a motion is made regarding a variance, it is generally made in the affirmative. Moving to grant does not commit the board. It simply offers for consideration. The board also, well, we're not hearing anything else this evening, so any person who is aggrieved by the decision of the board may file an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the board's resolution to the appellant. Tonight there are 2 cases on the agenda. Number 0805V for 4 University Terrace, which is zoned R3, Delta Tau Delta is the appellant, and number 0806V for 7 Bayard Street, which is zoned R1, and Sean Jones is the appellant. The board is required by law to take testimony under oath. Anyone here this evening who wishes to speak, please stand to be sworn at this time. Do you swear that the testimony you will give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. At this time, we were hoping that Michelle Draybold would be present. If she's not here within a short time, by the time the actual presentations begin, the option exists for the people who are presenting their cases this evening to request that we hear it next month instead. However, with any luck at all, she'll be here any minute now. Steve is going to call her again. I think I'd like at this time just to pause for long enough for the phone call to be made. So, as you were. So, sorry about that. Okay, while we're waiting for Ms. Draybold, who's been delayed, we've just approved the minutes from the March 11 meeting, and we are going to hear from Susan and Hans Pesch, who wrote to Mr. Pearson saying, "I'm writing to ask we be added to the agenda of the zoning board meeting on April 8. We'd like to address the board concerning a variance the board granted, which affected a home we own at 8 Strathmore Boulevard." And would you like to come up and state to the podium there? And is that? Oh no, you come here now. Beg your pardon.
I'd like to first give each of you a couple of documents. These are photographs of our house.
Okay.
Should I give that to the four of you, or?
And one from Ms. Drabel when she comes.
Thank you.
This is not what I thought it was. I guess.
You need to up there, sit right here, whichever is most comfortable.
Doesn't matter to me. I can sit right here.
Yeah.
That's always better.
And if you wouldn't mind again stating your name and address for the record.
My name's Hans Pesch, my wife is Sue, and our home is at 8 Strathmore. And we really appreciate you taking this.
That's not really the home.
Pardon me?
That's not
Well, it's our second home. Actually, our daughter lives there. We bought 8 Strathmore about a year and a half ago. And as I appreciate the board hearing us, we basically like to be heard, and we're not asking for any action of the board. Just like to share some concerns that we have. I've given you 2 pictures of the home, and there was a variance granted on this home. We bought the home about a year and a half ago, and at the time the seller knew and did not tell us that there was a variance granted at that time. To our neighbor. This is our, if you look at the 2 photographs there, the one that looks like this is the addition that was built, and our home is the one on your left. The other photograph is the diagram of our main entrance. This is what we see as a result of the addition. We open the door and we see a brick wall, and that's 20 feet away from where we are. At the time when we bought the home, there was no one in 8 Strathmore. It was owned, but the owner was also the realtor, and he did not disclose that there was any building going on. When we saw the home, looked like a very small ranch home, looked very nice. We were very happy with it. Then after we took possession of the home, we heard, well, there's this big addition going on there. It's going almost to the beginning of the street and so forth and so on. And we thought, whoa, that might have changed whether we bought the home or not. However, the board acted appropriately. We don't have any gripes about that. The neighbors apparently were all aware of that. They had their chance to talk. But there was nobody to complain. Actually, there was nobody there in that home. No one said anything. Our problem is that we would like, or our concern is that we would like the board to really think about future tenants, I guess, future owners of buildings. I feel in our case we kind of fell between a rock and a hard place. We did not know what was going to happen. Although everything was legal, there was nothing there that was to complain about, except that we did not know. We would ask the board to very seriously consider in the future to think about future tenants, future owners, what might impact them. We're asking for a buffer zone, maybe some trees or something like that. For instance, when we come out of our house, we look at the brick wall. We were trying to get some trees there, some things put there. We were told, well, it's not your property, you can't do that. Well, probably, what we're thinking, that would be nice if the board would have stipulated that when granting the variance, to say, well, yes, we would like you to build, and as we would too, I think that it's a very nice building, but put a buffer there, some kind of landscaping, some kind of trees, something like that. If the board had done something like that, I think would be appropriate, and would be a good thing for future cases when you grant variances. And again, we have nothing against the variance. We think these types of things are good, but having some kind of a buffer, some kind of landscaping, some kind of fence, I wouldn't say fence, but trees, bushes like that. If you'd stipulated that, I think that would be a good thing to do in the future.
But you're not requesting some notification as part of the variance or something?
No, not at all. The request on our part, again, this is not a request, but it's a suggestion, is that you as a board are very cautious when you grant it, which I'm sure you are, but take a look at situations like ours where there is no owner there to ask. For instance, if the people who are living in 8 Strathmore would ask, do you mind having this addition there? The people at 6 Strathmore and all around there, people say yes, no, come to argue in front of the board and so forth. Well, in this case, there was no one there to argue. The house was vacant, except for the realtor, who was also the owner, who was not going to say a word, who did not discuss that with us, who did not disclose that with us. That was wrong.
What a difference some ivy would make on that wall.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
What we're asking, what we're saying, what we're asking.
I believe, is this something that is now being addressed by the tree commission? Is there a requirement?
I don't know,
No.
Mr. Pearson would know that.
It's not addressed at this time, still.
We went out and we planted, we were willing to plant some nice, very narrow skyrocket junipers. Because we thought, because our garage is there, if you look, you can see, it looks like our garage sticks out there. And there was a nice 12-inch strip, so at our expense, we started to plant some narrow skyrocket junipers, and we were informed that that was not our property and we could not put them there.
Well,
And we actually had to take them out.
And we had to take them
let
out.
me just say a couple of things here. This case was heard, and because of concerns about the size of the addition that was being considered, we asked to get specific information from the contractor about the specifics of the size of the building, so it was continued. I happen not to be here when we did get that information, but as far as I know from the first meeting, Mr. Karageorge was the appellant, and I don't remember who represented him, but from all we knew, Mr. Karageorge did own the house, whether he was in it or not.
No, we're talking about 8 Strathmore. Mr. Kerry George was in that house.
Okay.
8 Strathmore, there was no one there.
The house, your house was unoccupied.
My house
I
was
see, so
unoccupied.
no one in your house. When this case was initially presented, the attorney, who I guess Mr. Karageorge was not here, his attorney represented him, and Mr. Gehrig said that he was unaware of any opposition to the variance, and he also presented evidence that, I'm trying to find that the neighbors in general supported it. I'm trying to find where he named the number of people who supported it. But according to him, there was no problem with the neighbors who presumably had been consulted. However, we were told, I specifically said that I thought that together the variances were significant. Mr. Gruser was worried that the addition might be too big, as was I. We were told that it would be a garage with rooms above it. It was supposed to be a 2.5-car size garage, and above it would be a master bedroom, a closet, a bathroom, and an office. I think perhaps we were just as surprised, I was just as surprised as you, when suddenly an addition appeared that was certainly larger than the house.
Yeah.
You know, actually,
You're not sworn in, so if you can speak, you need to be sworn in and come.
Would you like to speak?
I would.
Okay, if you want to stand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will. I
Okay.
do.
You can just sit right
And
there
then
if
you
you'd
can come over
like.
here and
That'll be fine.
identify yourself for the record.
Where do I go?
Just right, either of those chairs.
That's fine, you can sit right
Yeah.
there.
I'm sorry. Thanks.
Then everybody
used to
can
it,
hear
it's
you.
okay.
Thank you.
Otherwise, you won't be able to be heard.
We defend his right to build. We believe in his right to build. It's just that we would have liked if there was something that, where we didn't open our door and just see the brick wall. You know, if there'd been ivy on there or bushes or something that would have softened that
nice-
view.
a
That
nice
is our, even though
trellis
it
or
looks
something.
like the front door is the main door, it isn't. The side door is our main door, and that's what we see.
Well, all I can say is that I think neighbors there that I've talked to do now share some of your concerns, and I certainly do. And I can't say that the case was misrepresented to us because I did not hear the second meeting when they came and actually told how big it was. We were asked to give a variance for that side setback, and had I been there to vote, I would have said no. But that's not the way it worked out.
Right, and we appreciate hearing, you letting us speak about this, and it is quite a building. If you ever had a chance to look at it, I mean, you walk by there and or drive by, and wow, is it a church? Is it a, you know, it's quite a building, and from one standpoint, it's pretty impressive to have that in your neighborhood. If all the houses look like that, you know, your values go up. That's one argument. So it's a nice building, and Mr. Karajoy is a nice person, and we do, as my wife said, we do support people building and doing good things. Our concern was, number one, we didn't know about it. That's something that the board might, you know, just take into consideration that you think about that, because you know, we weren't there, there was nobody there, and
Right.
so you as a board, we were thinking, maybe think about protecting the rights of those who aren't there.
But the realtor is the one that didn't protect your rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
And
absolutely.
he is
That-
knowledgeable about what affects
Absolutely.
home values.
Absolutely,
So he was not straightforward or candid, either
absolutely.
one.
That is the person.
That's who you ought to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the person we're upset about, upset, you know, the whole shit. You identify that very well, and we're aware of that. We'd like to just, you know, just air our feelings, and hopefully the board just kind of puts that, in their.
I can certainly understand that you're appalled
Sure.
and disappointed both.
Sure, yeah. So, as far as we're concerned, letting us talk is a good thing, and secondly, consider when you didn't know it's going to be that big, and who did, but thinking about just putting something in there, make sure that anybody who might be, you know, we don't know about.
Building.
We attach, as a group, a lot of significance to neighbors that don't want to see something done. And if one or two neighbors complain, I'm very reluctant to let anyone do anything. But if none of the neighbors complain about it or have negative observations regarding it,
Being
Sure.
supportive, actually.
But you know what a difference if you could
and
open,
actually be supportive.
Yeah,
Sure.
they were
if you could
actually-
open the door and see bushes out there.
Sure.
What a difference
Well,
that would
but-
be.
Well, you're the one, though, that's really been the most dramatically affected. And you're the one, if you lived there, would have been up here saying, we don't want
But
that.
I wouldn't have been saying that. I wouldn't have been saying we don't
Exactly,
want
I'm
that.
sure you would have.
All
Because
I
you wouldn't
want,
have known, is that what you're saying? You wouldn't have known about the size?
I wouldn't mind the size. All I want are some bushes out there.
Well, Mr. Karageorge, as you said, is a reasonable person, so perhaps you can speak to him. And I would say that one of the things that always is considered when we're giving a variance is what will happen to this property in the future when the current owners no longer have it. How will it be treated? What will be the consequences of
Right.
future changes?
Right.
So,
And then that's an important thing. That's why we're here. I guess what you're saying right now, that's very important. What's going to happen in the future when the current owners aren't there? As we said, there was no owner there. We're there now. And how will it affect people down the line? And then that's kind of where we're coming from.
Well,
So
okay, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for sharing.
Thank you all.
we appreciate it very much.
And
Thank
I
you.
certainly can sympathize with
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.
And I apologize for being late. Luckily, I live close by.
It's not the first, you won't be the, you're not
I
the first, and
sent
you
the
won't be the
rest.
last.
I was a half an hour late one night.
Okay. Well, now then, we're going to now begin with the first case on the agenda is for University Terrace. And they are requesting, well, this is a case that was heard before and is back because the variance that they had received had a deadline of 1 year and it has expired. It was supposed to have been done by September of last year. So is there anything beyond that that you need to add before we begin to hear the case again, Steve?
Yes. I will.
Okay.
My name's Steve Pearson. I have been sworn in. I'm a zoning administrator for the city of Athens, Ohio. I provided you with new drawings related to the renovation of the property through these larger sheets. What I provided you previously in the packets is the same information that was considered in September 2005, case number 0516V. Originally, the application was refused because there was going to be an addition to the structure. Athens City Code 230801C says that any change or addition to an existing structure, including requests for increased occupancy in residential uses, parking shall be required to meet the requirements for all the uses of the premises. So originally, the plan did have addition to the building, and therefore, this section of the code became effective. My understanding now from talking to the architect for the project, Mr. Richard Dybeck, is that the area that was going to be added is not now going to be added. So there's no addition, there will be some change. And I will let Mr. Dybeck explain, the details and the differences between the previous plan, which did require a variance, in this one, which is not an addition, but could be considered a change requiring parking. There are 38 tenants in the building. It's a fraternity house, Delta Tau Delta fraternity. What happened was Mr. Dybeck may be able to elaborate on this fundraising, raising enough money to complete this renovation took this long. Permits or variances are good only for a year. You have to act on within a year. That time it expired.
Well, in the meantime, what they're requesting is actually changed, so that's...
Right, and then Mr. Dybeck can explain the nature and extent of the change.
Okay.
He's more familiar with the differences in the plans than I am.
Okay, thank you.
So in any case, if parking is required, it's 38 spaces that are required, where now there's just a double-wide driveway that's there.
Well,
That's
that
the extent of the
situation
parking.
hasn't changed any. All right, well then, does anybody have any questions for Steve before we get Mr. Dybeck? Then we're ready to hear the presentation. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Richard Dybeck. I'm the architect for Delta Tau Delta Fraternity Beta Chapter in Athens, Ohio.
And you were previously sworn, correct?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, and previously you were sworn, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. I believe you have in front of you the documents that Steve Pearson provided today. Do you also have similar documents from the 2005 petition?
No.
You should have in the packet of information, I provided you a set of drawings that are at half scale to these.
Yeah, here they
Yeah,
are.
okay.
Okay. I don't happen to have those in front of me, but as you can try to keep this brief, if you can see the existing building is in the shape of an H, the letter H. And what we had done 2 years ago to accommodate ADA requirements was build a small addition in the south part of the H, the recessed part of the H. This was to allow handicapped wheelchair access around the building to get to the back section where most of the residents are. And in this filled-in section, there was also an elevator.
Right.
During the last almost 2 years, there's been some changes to the design. largely to do with contract negotiations. Not only has it taken a while to get the money, but it's a little less money than the project originally cost. So we were looking for some ways to reduce the cost of the projects. And so what we arrived at was the scheme that you received, which was the, we'll call the current version. And if you look at the plans, which I hope aren't too confusing, they're first level, second level, third level, fourth level. And if you want to know how that relates to the building, when you cut through the building, that's what this drawing's about. As you may be familiar, all the houses on that street, all the buildings on that street step down the hill towards the east green. So that there is no parking there on any of these properties, whether it's Bryan Hall or the old Ag Building or the Phi Gam House or Brown House on the corner. None of these houses have parking. Anyway, we eliminated that addition to the south, and in place of that, to accommodate ADA, we tore out the center section of the H. Well, we'd like to tear out the center section of the H and replace it in such a way that the floors line up through the entire building. So we don't have to build around to get wheelchair access through. You come in the front door and you can go straight through to the back section. So this entire construction in the center is in effect kind of like an addition. I mean, we're tearing it down and rebuilding it, but it sits within the footprint of the existing building.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so I'm looking at this piece of paper right here, right?
That's the current
Okay,
version.
and are you now talking about this center section?
Yes.
So if you tear that out and rebuild it, you're planning to rebuild it
No.
out to the edges?
Look, if you were down towards the east green,
Okay,
the lowest level of that site, what you would have is this one section of the building. The rest of this, that's all shaded gray, is into the hill. That's not part of the building, I mean, at that level.
okay,
If you move up to the second floor, there's
okay.
that same section, and then that center section is a roughly 26 by 30 foot rectangle.
Okay, and that's called the informal room.
Yes, kind of a
Okay.
game room.
All right,
And then at the third level,
okay,
that's the level that you come in off the street.
okay.
Then in there's a conference study room, an elevator, and a stairway. And primarily access back to the residential area, which is to the east.
Okay. All right, and so is that where something's going to happen?
I'm sorry?
Is this the part you're tearing out?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, this is, what you're looking at is drawing of the new part.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, so it's the same size and shape as the old
As the
one?
old one, right.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You were mentioning something about the same level. Your point of ripping out has to do with putting one floor all the way
Yes.
to the back.
Yeah, as it turned out, the building, which, by the way, was built in 1968, has 2 levels on the west side and 3 levels on the east side. It just turned out that the third level on the east side is the same level as the entry level on the west side. When the building was originally built, that center section was halfway between, kind of like a tri-level house would be. So you always had a half a level of steps to go up, down, one way or the other to get to any of these levels. That obviously is not wheelchair accessible, and so we had to meet those requirements.
Maybe I understand.
Okay, I think so.
And the elevator will remain?
Yes, there's a new elevator going in. There isn't one there now. Yeah, everything you see in that little center section is new.
Okay.
The elevator is part of the ADA,
Yes.
meeting the requirements,
Mhm.
right? So they can go straight in from ground level, straight to the elevator and move to any place in the building.
Yeah, well, they
Yeah.
moved to, the elevator, what we're required to do is provide equal access to all of the major functions of the building,
Okay.
so
I see.
that
Okay,
a handicapped person can get to anything that's all the normal functions.
they'll be able to get down to the
Okay.
laundry room?
Yes,
By
there's a,
elevator?
well, there's a separate handicapped laundry on that level 3.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be able to get to the lower floor. I don't see the elevator going there.
No, but there's no function down there that's just some
I'm just
other
thinking
rooms.
like for fire or whatever, if the front of the building was on fire, how would that person get out of the building?
Mean something on the lower floor, or,
Well, yeah, if they, on the top floor as you come in from the west, how would they exit the building if there's no elevator all the way out the back, down at the bottom?
They can't get down
Okay,
to the
at-
bottom anyway.
In the case
if
of
you
a
come
fire,
in
you
off,
don't use the
that's-
elevator.
okay, there's,
Well, I guess that's true too.
okay, at the top level,
Yeah.
the second floor from the University Terrace side, that actually is not handicapped accessible, but all that's up there is sleeping rooms,
Right.
and that has 2 stairways out of it. The third level, the street level entrance, of course, is handicapped accessible.
Right.
So it has access to all the functions that exist in the building,
Right.
except, say, the rec room and the dining area, and there's an elevator to get to those.
But you understand my point, if there was a fire at the front door on University Terrace, how would that person exit the building?
They would have to go into that stairway and wait for assistance. I mean, that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering.
Yeah, there's
if there
2
was a
other
handicapped
stairways.
person in there, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions? All right.
So I guess, in summary, what we're asking for is what was the same variance that we had a year and a half ago. In principle, the design hasn't changed very much. Actually, we're accommodating 1 less resident, 37 plus the resident advisor. And as I've stated before, it's physically impossible to really comply with the parking requirement. We will end up with 2 parking spots. One is a handicapped spot, and the other one will probably be for the resident advisor.
Okay.
Are you ready to start building, or it seems like you were going to finish this in, was it June or July 2009?
This was, yeah, because of primarily the fundraising, we are, a year behind. But yes, we have applied for and obtained the shell permit for the state building permit. So actually, if everything is approved here, we should be ready to start construction within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, all right. Any other questions? All right, then you'll have an opportunity to speak again before we close the
Okay, thank you.
floor. And is there anyone here wanting to speak in favor or in general comment?
I want to speak in favor of it, but I don't know, did you want to speak? That's right.
Okay.
I'm Joanne Prisley. I live at 40 Grosvenor Street, Athens, Ohio. I'm the treasurer of Zeta chapter of Alpha Gamma Delta House Company, and we are their next-door neighbors. And I think the last time I probably spoke against them because I was mad at them, I think.
Well, would you state for the record that you have previously been sworn also, please?
Yes, I was. I stood up there. I know to do that. And the notice says that this is a question of parking, off-street parking. And my property is at 14 University Terrace, and we are actually next door to each other because they didn't number it right, and I kept telling them they didn't number it correctly, but they didn't. But we're next-door neighbors. My husband was on the house company when the Beta chapter built that new house. I was on we did it at the same time, the two houses, Alpha Gamma Delta and Delta Tau Delta were built at exactly the same time. And they started in 68, finished in 69, and I think we all moved in probably January of 70. Neither of us have any parking. And we had to come, if some of you have been here a long time, I'd give you the horror story when I went before the Board of Zoning Appeals at that time about getting that building put in there. But we do not have any parking at 14 University Terrace, and we were approved in the beginning for 62 people. I think we're now down to, I'm not sure, Steve, is it 53 or 52? 53, I think. I think it's 53. We've reduced it because the space says you can do it, but we have 53 people plus a house mother. We rent space at the parking garage for the house mother. The rest of the girls who have cars go down to, most of them are at Christ the King. My feeling on this is that when we both went in there, both the Delts and the Alpha Gams, we were allowed to go in there with a variance knowing we did not have any parking. And I grant you that not everybody had a car back in those days. For all these years, none of us have had any parking. And I don't think, I've never found that the parking was a problem over there. We've had other problems about being next door to each other, but they were not parking problems. I certainly am in favor of them going in there and doing the house over because it doesn't look very good, and our house looks fine. And we are in 2 weeks celebrating our 100th anniversary at Ohio University, and we would have liked to see that house, the Delt house, already completed. But the Alpha Gams do not have any parking. Bryan Hall is the next building. The Alpha Gams have the Delts on one side and Bryan Hall on the other side. And I do not know how many girls or men or whoever's in Bryan Hall now, but when I was a resident counselor there, I had 250 people. There are not 250 parking spots. And I grant you it's a university building, but I have always felt that they should be held to the same requirement that everybody else is. So parking, I would not like to see them denied the ability to do this because of parking. Alpha Gams have it. If you say they can't do it, you really should take it away from us too. Plus, I have been in negotiation with, I haven't started on the city yet, but the university wanted to change some things in the back of the building. Both the Delts and the Alpha Gams have frontage on what is called Green Street or Green Avenue. It was blocked off, first by the university and second by Jeff Hill being closed. And I'm still not happy about that because I still say we have access to the back of our property, and each of us could have put at least, the Delts could put more in there, but we could put 6 in ours, and I think you could probably put 8 so that you could have some parking for people. That's something that still has to be resolved, but I would certainly urge you to, if parking is the one thing that's a problem, certainly that should be removed from the consideration. They should be allowed to continue as they have been since 1969. So, and as their nearest neighbor, we're certainly in favor of them doing that. Thank you.
I have a question for
Yeah.
you. You said that parking wasn't a problem. You said parking is no problem.
Parking, we don't, when the girls come in, and I'm sure when the men come in there, they know there is no place to park. And it's made very clear to them. And you have to understand that the people who live in fraternity and sorority houses, the seniors don't want to live there, so they take off. They're out in the city. Some juniors, but mostly you get sophomores. They listen to everything you say. You say you can't have a car here, you've got to go down over the hill to, I think the closest one where everybody goes is Christ the King. So we have not had problems with people trying to park, getting parking tickets in front of the building on University Terrace. When they have the move-in and the exit, it's no more difficult than Bryan Hall, which has no place to park. It's no more difficult than, is it Bromley or College Inn, whichever it is right now. It's no more difficult than any place else. And so they're certainly not creating a hardship on University Terrace for anybody else. I've been working with them since, more than 50 years as an advisor And as some of it was interrupted by us going someplace else, but for more than 50 years, and my husband, until he died, worked with them for 45 or some years. We have parking, and cars have not been a problem to us.
So what you're saying, in other words, would be that parking isn't a problem because they are aware of the fact that there is no parking?
That's right. They know, before they go in there, they know there isn't any there. So if they don't, if they don't want to go there and they're required to do it, you remove them from the group. They just have to follow the rules. But I don't know, neither one of you are Delts, are you?
I am.
Are you a Delt? Do you know of any, are you a Beta chapter Delt?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
What year?
1961.
Oh, you're one of those young kids. We didn't come back till 63. But then you were at 32 President Street then, so you can't compare that. But I think all those years, no problem.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wanting to speak in favor? Please state your name and address and affirm that you've been sworn.
My name is Terrence E. Russell. My address is 3158 North Waynesville Road in Oregonia, Ohio. Okay, I have been previously sworn.
Thank you.
I am the president of the House Association of Beta Chapter Delta Tau Delta. I am also the project leader for the renovation project that is currently in process. I would certainly support what Mrs. Prisley has said about the parking. It has really not been an issue for us. People know that there's no parking and plan accordingly. I will say also to you, this has been a project in progress for a period of time, and as Mr. Dybeck has said, primarily to be sure that we canvass all of our alumni and be sure that we have the funds available to do the work. We do now have that. We are ready to proceed. We want to start work here yet in April and plan to be completed by the fall quarter of 2009, September 2009. So we're ready right now to go, and that's why we're here.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor, in general comment, or in opposition? Steve?
Yeah, I had provided you the minutes of the previous hearing, which has the discussion related to the property, its topography, and the findings of the board. So there is that additional information that, has been presented previously but may not have been presented tonight. So that's why I wanted you to have a copy of those previous minutes.
If this is grandfathered, why do they need a variance?
Because
There
they're
was
making a
suggestion
change.
which they...
Because they're modifying the floor plans?
Well, it was really because initially because they were planning an addition, which they now are not actually.
But they're not planning an addition now. I'm just trying to find out why they need
It's a
a
permit.
variance.
It's a year from the permit.
As I'd mentioned, 230801C says any change or addition to a building. Obviously, there was addition the last time. Is this a change? Well, I suppose the board could consider that. The word change is not defined. How much change is enough change to require parking?
There aren't
And the-
percentages that apply to remodeling or...
No, for example, like the cost of improvement compared to the existing value, the square footage of an addition or change, total floor area being remodeled or rehabilitated. There's no guidance in the ordinance. It just says change or addition. So now there is no addition. Is there change? Well, there's some
I'm kind of
change.
surprised that they need a variance.
Well, that's another function of the Board of Zoning Appeals also, is to interpret the ordinance. You will have at your next meeting 3 requests for what's called administrative review, although that's not necessarily the request today. And Mr. Dybeck and I did have discussion about changes in the plan, but still I wanted to have the board review the entire case again, just to verify the fact that, parking was still required, or now parking was not required, or the ordinance didn't have effect, or the word change meant this was significant enough change that a parking variance was required.
Okay. Any other questions for Steve?
No.
Well, Mr. Dubbeck, do you have anything further that you'd like to add before we close discussion from the floor and begin to consider the case?
No.
Okay, well then, at this time, then the discussion from the floor is closed and ready to consider whether, one, we need to provide a variance for this construction that they're planning, and if we do,
That's
whether
the
it's
nature
appropriate.
of it.
Yeah. That's a good question, Roger. Since they're no longer adding on to it, and they're really just doing internal remodeling, it's fairly extensive, however, and it might give them a better situation to have the variance, but I don't know, I'm willing to, who else thinks that perhaps we don't need
Well, they
to?
requested for a variance, and we need to act on that.
What's the nature of the variance going to be?
Yeah, what's the variance from and for?
Well, the variance, again, is from
Oh.
Table B off-street
Yeah,
parking.
because the parking requirement.
They're off-street parking.
I
That's
thought
the-
that was grandfathered.
But they already
Well,
have.
It
that,
is,
yeah.
but since they're making what might be a change, then that's why they're before us.
Yeah,
I mean, they're putting in an elevator, there's a floor change happening,
that's
there's something being torn down. I mean,
pretty extensive.
There's
a renovation, extensive
There is
renovation.
extensive.
Yeah.
Just for safety's sake, might as well do it.
Oh, I'll agree, just,
Can't hurt.
okay, well then, I would,
I would like to propose, just maybe we can not have the discussion and just go vote.
okay. Well, yeah, if our variance were ever challenged, however, if we were
Yeah, well-
not to have it at least go through the findings and
Or just
we don't
refer
want
to
to
the
be.
previous findings that we
Well,
had.
it
from
won't take
the-
very long.
Yeah. we
I
could do that.
move that we grant a variance to the property at 4 University Terrace from Section 2311, Table B, off-street parking requirements to permit a change to an existing structure where such change requires 38 accessible parking spaces and only 2 accessible parking spaces are provided, with the condition that the changes are in accordance with the plans as presented.
So we're going to give them a variance for parking. Is that what I understood you to say?
They have had either a variance or permission to have these parking
I understand.
conditions since 1968.
I understand.
And since they have no means of providing the parking, which was not provided in 1968, I don't think that I'm going to be willing to say you now have to have 38 parking spaces.
But essentially-
Normally, I would say no, but. in
And
this
they are
instance-
making a change to the building.
Yeah,
They're making some changes, they're mostly not exterior, and they're not expanding the footprint of the building.
or the use,
Which ordinarily.
use.
or the use, yeah.
Or the
Yeah, or the use, they're not increasing the occupancy. And maybe we should say that too, with the condition that the building complies with the plans as presented and that the occupancy is not increased.
Okay, yeah,
That sounds-
modified that way. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right. And on your suggestion that we use the findings from before as a guide, what the first finding would be for hardship and difficulty, and,
There isn't a parking.
There isn't any
There's never
parking.
been any parking.
right, and it's not possible to create it, any parking, particularly since the access has been closed to the back of the building. All right, anything additional to add to that? No. The exceptional circumstances that pertain to the property?
Well, again, it's the location and the typography and the fact that when Ms. Prisley and others argued for the location of these buildings at this space in 1968, they were granted permission to do it. And if you now denied that, basically you would have an empty building.
Yeah. Well,
Or it would have to go to some totally...
I don't understand why we wouldn't have the same argument on Court Street.
Well, if they were grandfathered, then they are in the same position.
yeah, when they're grandfathered, they have to.
So there
They
again, you're
lose
going
their-
back, you're saying this is grandfathered, they don't need a variance.
They
Well,
do
they're
need a
making-
variance, that's why they're
We
here.
have allowed that they're making some changes, which means that we are continuing whatever condition they have had for the last 40
We're
years.
considering whether to continue it. That's the,
I'm having a hard time.
You can always vote no.
I'd like to understand it rather than just be arbitrary.
I'm just guessing that the considerable amount of money they're going to spend in this project.
That's what
and
I'm curious
based-
about also.
Yeah, it's probably going to be quite a bit. Maybe they can tell us how much, but based on that, we can say that this is a major change or a minor change or something.
well, yeah, and that's why they need to have approval for continuing their grandfathered status on the parking, is because they're making a change, and when they make a major change, they're supposed to come back for an opportunity to make sure that this is still an appropriate exception, but it seems to me it's still an appropriate exception for a building like that, built specifically for that purpose, and given the given that they were not required to have parking when the building was first erected, it seems
Right. It's not
appropriate now.
possible, it's not possible
You
to
can't make the
provide it
change,
now.
yeah. Okay, so that's the exceptional circumstances, the location of the property. And the preservation of equal property rights. Well, it's been testified that other buildings in the same vicinity have the same situation. There is no parking for the neighboring buildings, so it wouldn't be a privilege for them to be continue with their current status. And minimum, they're not going to be adding to their occupancy. Detriment, is there any detriment to the neighbors to continue as they were?
I don't know why we said yes before, but the answer is no, right?
Well,
There's no detriment.
Yes, there is no. Yes, we have no, yeah,
We need to
the
define-
detriment is
yeah.
absent.
Absent, yes.
Yes, okay. Yes,
Okay.
And is this of a general nature?
Again, we answered yes, but
Well-
that means no.
Yes, it's not.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right. Is there any additional discussion at this time? And if not, I see no additional hands going up. Who would like to vote first? I'm going to start. Michelle, I'm going to start with you.
Sure, yes.
Yes.
And Betty?
Yes.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So hope you get it all done by the time everybody's ready to move in.
Thank you very much.
All right, then, our next case.
Try to use local contractors, we need the employment opportunities.
All right. Our next case is number 0806V. It's for 7 Bayard Street, which is zoned R1, and Sean Jones is our appellant, requesting a variance from 230504C to increase the the cubic content of a non-conforming building, where that kind of increase is prohibited. And Steve, could you give us the details on this refusal?
Sure. Again, my name's Steve Pearson. I have been sworn in. I'm a zoning administrator for the city of Athens, Ohio. The particular non-conforming use on this property is not that the buildings are being occupied or used in a non-conforming manner. They're both single-family residential homes, each with occupancy of 2. They both have rental permits on them. 27 Pratt and 7 Bayard are on the same lot. So that's where the nonconformity lies.
I see.
This is a section of the code that is not common for us to see, but it does specifically address the fact that if you have a nonconforming use, you cannot expand the cubic content. So what you have in your packet of information should be the drawing that illustrates the location of the property. It's just above the HDL Center, an M zone. It's in an R1, but also adjacent to a B1 and an R3 zone. You would never know by looking at 7 Byard and 23 Pratt that they were on the same lot. I did provide you, though, a copy of a GIS print-off that shows that it is just one lot. And on this one in particular, too, I've just kind of, tried to illustrate the location of the buildings.
Could they be divided?
It could be divided, but it would require a variance for lot size. Let's see. The lot's only 5,000 square feet, where a lot now would have an 8,000 square foot minimum. So in theory, it could be divided with a variance. One thing, though, that would change if you did somehow have it subdivided by variance is that there is enough parking. There are probably 5 or 6 parking spots in total. There's only 1 parking spot next to 7 Byard. So if it were split, it would require an additional parking spot at a minimum to accommodate 2 tenants.
I wondered how they were getting that other parking.
Yeah, there's
So
a
that
driveway
explains
up to 23 Pratt.
Yeah, I saw that, but I thought it was separate, so
No,
okay.
it's all in the same lot.
Okay.
I provide you with information that shows the existing footprint. It's just a single-story home right now. Mr. Jones generated this drawing. It shows the size of the 2 bedrooms, the living room, and the kitchen currently. The next sheet shows the same floor as it would be renovated. And then the third sheet that you should have shows a change in, if the increase in cubic content is permitted, the second floor, which is just an attic now, will be converted or changed to the second bedroom. This area right now is just attic space. Mr. Jones, I think in his arguments, will present some, particulars about the hardship. My purpose right now is just to present to you, the main facts pertaining to the request. So there will be increase in cubic content.
So these are rental properties?
They both, yes, have valid rental permits.
They're not owner-occupied?
No, they are not owner-occupied. And as I mentioned, currently the permits are for 2 residents in each property. With this application, there's no request for increased occupancy. The section that I mentioned before, 230801C, it specifically says if you request increased occupancy, that also kicks in the requirement for additional parking. But in this particular case, it's just an expansion of the cubic area of this second building. So,
How
and
much
there is
increase
enough
do we
parking.
have? Are we talking about? How much increase?
You should have in your packet of information a statement by Mr. Jones about what he intends to do. And currently, the roof is a 6.68 to 12 pitch. That's really odd. 612 usually is a common pitch. But he would like to increase the pitch to 1212. Essentially, it makes the peak of the roof a right triangle. And then creates quite a bit more usable area as opposed to a roof that's flatter. 612 is bent down about like that. Pretty hard to stand on. 1212 is almost impossible to stand on. It creates a right angle. So you have that increased ceiling height potential. And with that increase in ceiling height, then you do have the ability or potential ceiling height to create living space. Generally speaking, this can be done with either the top connector of a prefabricated truss or a collar tie between site-cut rafters, which essentially creates the vaulted area In the you've seen Cape Cod houses with the vaulted ceiling. I suspect, in effect, that's what will be created in this upstairs
Is the
area.
second floor occupied now?
Right now, it's just an attic area, as far as
It's
I
an
know.
attic area.
It's this place for squirrels to feed.
So
according to
what
the
we're
description.
doing, we're turning a two-bedroom home into a three-bedroom home, is that it?
No, not if you look at the plans.
They're going to
It shows
enlarge.
first floor having two bedrooms.
Yeah, that's the,
Existing.
this is the proposal, this is the new first floor.
That's
It's
the
going to
existing
enlarge the
layout.
bedroom and enlarge the bathroom. See where you have,
Oh.
and then put the
You're putting in
second
two
bedroom.
bath, you're putting in a second bath.
Actually, it said bedroom 2 twice, but it meant bedroom 1 and bedroom 2.
Right.
Yeah, this first one.
But the bedrooms at the moment are big enough for double occupancy.
Yeah,
aren't they?
those are not small bedrooms. The bathroom is small.
Right,
Right.
in an R1 zone, you can only have maximum occupancy of 3, and that's if you have parking.
Right, but I
But
thought you
this
said
is
he
an
has
M zone.
parking.
This has sufficient parking, but there is no request to increase occupancy.
Actually, it's R1.
Right.
That would kick in a whole other
Right.
expansion of a non-conforming use.
Yeah, I was
If
just
you were-
saying that it,
The request, that would have been something additional, if
Right.
there had been a request to take the 2 and 2 occupancies to 3 and 2, or
I-
3 and 3.
I just
But that
wouldn't want-
wasn't the request.
I wouldn't want someone to be coming in the back door.
you mean now, as it is now.
Well, what I'm reading here too in his letter that he sent to the board members is that basically this house is in very poor repair,
It is.
and it's moldy, and there's a lot of health issues possibly.
I'd be worried about the foundation, too.
And so he's basically wanting to, improve the existing structure. And by doing that, he's looking at making it a little larger as well. Maybe,
Makes more sense.
maybe it isn't as easily rentable as it is.
Well,
That's my guess.
I think the thing that's the bottom line is that non-conforming properties are supposed to disappear eventually, and that's why it says that you can't do more than just general repairs on them. You're not supposed to put a whole lot of money in them and make them really better so they last a long time. They are supposed to disappear. And I'm not sure whether this property has been occupied for the previous year or not. Is it occupied now?
Yes, it is occupied.
Okay, so we don't really...
In need of some repair. If you visited
Okay.
the site, the foundation adjacent to the alley that's right there is quite in disrepair and failure.
Right. So we
Mr.
don't really have to worry about 230503, the non-conforming use has ceased for a year, so, because that's not really the case. We're really
Right,
only
that's
talking about 230504C, right, the repairs,
Right.
or the, yeah.
Right. Repairs are permitted under that section of the code up to
Right.
65% of the value of a non-conforming use. However, there is that exception for it, but you cannot expand the cubic area of the
Right,
building.
okay.
So even when you do have a non-conforming use or a non-conforming building, you are allowed to do renovations and improvements to it up to 65% of the value
Yeah, okay.
without having to come to the board
Okay.
Yeah.
or...
But in this
or-
case, he's making it bigger.
Right. There's additional cubic area being added to accommodate moving one bedroom from the downstairs to the upstairs and adding a bathroom too.
And can you repeat that other point you made, Betty, about the issue with, I know we're talking about two buildings on a small site here, and can you repeat? what
I'm
you
not
said?
sure which one
You were
mean.
talking about the objective with non-conforming uses is to have them disappear. I think that's what,
Right, I mean theoretically, I think that's why that's in the code, that you don't want to continue a non-conforming use in perpetuity if you can do
yeah,
otherwise.
it's okay to repair the
Right.
non-conforming building,
To
but to expand it.
65%, to
Right.
65% of the value is what you're saying.
Right, or in this case, his problem is that he is adding cubic space.
Right.
So that is in a sense expanding it. So I guess that's the question for us. Do you want to go literally by the code and say it's supposed to disappear and he's adding space and so no? Or do you want to provide some relief.
Well,
Good.
and I think what we're discussing about in the overall scheme of things in terms of comprehensive planning and everything is that we have a lot of aging structures in this community. And here's a structure that, obviously, there were 2 homes on a very small lot, which wouldn't conform now, because we're at 8,000 and this was 5,000 or
Right.
something. So the point is, how, do you, at some point, not have that structure anymore because it's so deteriorating? Or do you continue to put money in it?
What is the condition of the other house? I didn't see this one, so.
I didn't realize that it was on the same
attention
lot,
to it.
so I didn't pay attention to that.
He says
either.
it was renovated 10 years ago in this letter.
It's been occupied the entire time, and the tenants like the other house, and they've been staying there for 3 years. You can actually see the other house on the website. That's one of the houses that when people called out, they wanted.
Is there anything else for you to say, Steve?
No.
Why don't you come up to the microphone now and identify yourself and affirm that you've been sworn and tell us all about it?
My name's Sean Jones. I live at 10 Misty Lane in Plains. I've been sworn in. I bought these 2 houses, it must have been 20 years ago. And shortly after buying 7 Byers Street, we renovated at the time, put new windows in it, rewired it, replumbed it, and those sort of things. But really not much has been done to it in that time. It's showing it. It needs new carpet and that sort of thing. One of the problems is we noticed that the old metal roof had been leaking, and so we were crawling around up in the attic looking for it. And the rafters are all kinds of goofy different directions and crooked and such and bowed. So it occurred to us, well, the main problem this house has always had is that the bathroom, the thing is just tiny. Obviously somebody added it on, 40 years ago or something, and it's a phone booth. And so it's been a nonstop mold and problem with that place. And so it occurred to us that if we had moved one of the bedrooms up into the attic space, that it would end up freeing up a lot of space downstairs, make a bathroom down there, and then give the person upstairs their own bathroom. And one of the reasons that we decided that to apply for the building permit was there would be, to really do the roof right, it would be easier almost just to take the whole thing off and just replace it with trusses. Then it's going to be straight, it's going to be easy to insulate, it's going to be something that'll last, as opposed to just sort of shingling it over and patching it. And we thought, well, if we're going to go to that much effort, why not go ahead and invest the $30,000 or $40,000 in repairing the house and see what we can do with the city and talking about repairing the foundation, those sort of things. But that's when we ran across the problem of being non-conforming because we had 2 buildings in the same lot. I don't know when these things were built, but I've owned them for 20 years and they were old then. Now, I guess the thing I really want to stress here is we're not increasing the footprint of this building in any way. I mean, the building footprint is exactly the same. And the only thing that you're going to see different from looking to the outside is that the pitch of the roof changes slightly. It's going to be slightly steeper is what's going to happen to accommodate the added room in the attic. And one of the things that we'd like to do with that is we really want to make it like 23 Pratt Street, and that we're going to try to take advantage of so as you walk in, you'll see sort of a cathedral ceiling in the first part and the stairway that wraps around and goes up in the second floor bedroom. I think it's going to be an interesting and pretty house when we're done. And we did the same thing, like say the 23 Pratt place in Pasadena. So we're not asking for any more occupants. Obviously, we had to do that. If we were going to do that, we'd have to ask for another variance. We're not interested in doing that. They're just 2 little houses there, and we'd like to improve the one. So.
Are you going to be adding any dormers or anything on this?
No. We discussed adding dormers, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to go with skylights and just end windows. Because if we add dormers, then we're going to start making it, it'll look much bigger than if we do that. So.
You show windows, 3 windows in the upper story.
Let me see here.
At either end.
It says a skylight, and it shows windows on the end. There's the end of the house on either end, gable ends.
I see a window,
39 by 36,
and then
39 by 36 on the front side by the stairwell,
All right, maybe we're looking at different.
and then
48 to 16.
Proposed second floor, I think is what they're looking at.
Right.
I guess I don't see a 39 by 36. I see a 48 by 60 in the rear.
Right,
gable
and
end.
then a 36 by 36 and 36 by 36.
Right.
What's that?
That 136 by 36 is obviously a mistake. Must be the dormer that we forgot to take off of there.
You'd have to have a dormer there in order to have a
Well,
window.
we don't want that. There isn't going to be a dormer or a window there. That's something we just apparently failed to pull off the diagram when I resubmitted it.
So you'd have a window in each gable end?
Right. And a skylight midway through. Well, I didn't even notice that was still there. And there's already existing a window in the gable end that's smaller than that already exists. And one reason we put the larger window on the gable end, it's at the back of the house, so it won't end up changing the appearance of the front of the house very much.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions? What will you do if you don't get your variance?
Patch it. We'll fix the roof and essentially leave most of the house alone. Replace the carpet and let it muddle on through, I guess.
And this has been a continuously occupied building also?
Yes.
You have a couple of students living in there at this time, or do you ever have families living there, or what do you
It's
rent to?
it's mostly grad students. Both houses have grad students.
Grad students.
So.
It doesn't strike me that a 12.5 by 11.5, two 12.5 by 11.5 bedrooms are particularly small bedrooms, but for unrelated people perhaps. It's the bathroom that,
Yeah,
how big
that's-
is that bathroom?
It's
About
the width of the
8 by
standard
8?
bathtub, which I
It's
believe
5
is
foot.
60
The
inches.
tubs are
5
5 foot long, so it's got to be 5 foot that way.
Yeah.
5 feet, okay. Well, the rear porch it says is 6 by 6.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not going for that.
It's certainly not up to scale at all, because bathtubs are always 5 foot from side to side. when you-
Yeah, that bathtub
Right.
completely occupies that wall.
So obviously,
One of the things that makes that bathroom so tiny is the ceiling comes down so low. It just, it's got a vent fan.
So it was basically a lean-to that was.
Yeah,
added
somebody
to the
tacked it on
house.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was just a back porch or something enclosed partly.
So as Ms. Frederick said, if you don't get the variance, you'll just kind of patch the place up.
Yeah. It's not like it'll be demolished or anything, just,
It's not at that stage.
no.
Is there a basement underneath this or crawl space?
There's a very small basement in the back corner, and there's the rest of it's under a crawl space.
Well, does anybody have any additional questions? No? Well, it seems there is no one here to speak other than Steve. Do you have any other comments, Steve?
No.
And if you have no additional comments, then I guess we can close discussion from the floor and
Thank you.
begin to consider.
I was going to suggest to add to the motion that we mentioned the 12 by 12 pitch is the only increase in the cubic area and with no dormers, because the plan was submitted shows a window, so we just
Yeah.
mentioned that no dormers.
Yeah. Well.
shows a window, but it doesn't show a dormer.
Okay. Having done drawings like that on, I know how easy it is to just miss something, but, all right, well, does anybody want to make a motion for this variance for 0806?
I guess I could do that.
Okay.
I move to grant the variance to the property at 7, how is it pronounced, Byard Street, from section 230504C to increase the cubic content of a non-conforming building where such increase in cubic content is prohibited provided that the proposed plan provides a 12 by 12 roof pitch with no dormers on the second floor.
Okay.
You might say that the occupancy is not increased and the footprint is not changed.
Uh,
In addition to occupancy.
You know, as
It has the capability for that, though, and the parking.
mhm,
allow-
per submitted plans.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Per submitted plans, except for the roof, which is a 12 by 12 pitch
And with
no
that, with that
dormers.
addition of no added occupancy or, what was the other thing?
Additions in addition to the roof changes.
And no additions in addition to the roof.
No changes in the footprint.
Right,
Uh,
that was it.
Yeah, okay. But occupancy, that's something that they have to deal with it later on if they want to add more people.
That
So
is
that's
true,
not a
but
problem.
I'd like it in there
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
so it's clear, because the bedrooms are big enough to
Okay, with
accommodate
same,
everything.
same footprint and no additional bedrooms.
Didn't help a big
So the rental
bedroom
permit
downstairs.
would be for two people.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
The
still, the rental permit
Rental
will still be.
permit would be for two people.
Okay, would you like to second it that way? Or do we have a second?
I can second it.
Okay. Is that all nice and clear?
Did you get that, Brian?
Okay, okay, well, it's, yeah, then we don't, would you like to state it
Let
again?
me read the conditions that I had. Provided the plans that the roof has a 12 by 12 pitch with no dormers, per submitted plans, with the same footprint and no additional bedrooms.
No additional
additional
occupants.
You said bedrooms.
Yeah, I thought that might have,
Okay.
that's right, right? Okay, and it's been seconded. All right, then. So, is there a practical difficulty or undue hardship by exceptional conditions?
The question is, would it create undue hardship that is not necessary for the purposes of the code
Yes,
if we
right.
do not grant the variance?
Yeah, there's some confusion there.
Would it create a hardship unnecessary to the code? Well,
Would we be creating the hardship?
Well, the question is that if they want to, because this house has got lots of problems, if they want to fix it, spend so much money, and then but still they're going to have 2 bedroom, is this going to be creating a, can they repair the building as it is with minimal, so that they don't need a variance? That's the question.
Yes.
He can repair it.
Or if they're going to be spending, they can, is there any rule that how much money can they spend before there's any change?
65%.
65%. If he's going to spend more than 65% of the cost of the building to renovate that, it still is going to end up with a present 2 by 2 bedroom, so then there is no variance for that if there is no change in the cubic feet, right?
Right.
Cubic.
so,
Let me rephrase my question. This building is non-conforming.
Right.
Can he just go in there without a variance, spend so much money to renovate it, to make it look good, without increasing any cubic feet?
Yes.
So then there's no hardship.
If I could just read 230504C, actually 230504. In the event, in the event any building or structure with non-conforming use is destroyed by any means to the extent of more than 65%, it shall not be rebuilt, restored, or reoccupied unless the change to a use which conforms to all the regulations of the code. That's the beginning section. It's about repair and replacement of damaged buildings, and then it goes on. When such non-conforming structure is damaged, destroyed, or falls into disrepair to extent of 65% or less, no repairs or rebuilding shall be permitted except in conformity with all applicable regulations and the following. So if Mr. Jones were not expanding the cubic content, he could improve the property up to 65% if, number one, a zoning permit pertaining to such restoration shall be applied for and issued within 1 year of such destruction. In this case, it's damage. The rebuilding shall be completed within 1 year, and a request for an extension of time may be granted by the zoning board. I'm not sure why that's, but that is the case. For example, in the previous case for extension of time, like on temporary uses. B, or number 2, such restoration shall not cause a new nonconformity, nor shall it increase the degree of nonconformance or noncompliance existing prior to such damage or destruction. And then C, on any nonconforming structure or portion of a structure containing nonconforming use, work may be done on ordinary repairs or on repairs or replacement of non-load-bearing walls, fixtures, wiring, or plumbing. And then here's the kicker, provided that the cubic content existing when it became nonconforming shall not be increased. So if he were not expanding it, he could obtain a permit, just a straight-up permit. There's enough parking, and essentially there it's in the section that talks about non-conforming uses in buildings.
The hardship is more than the actual bathroom.
It's just going to be one person.
How we have to change that is right making it.
He says it was 2 tenants. Well, I suppose that you could argue that the hardship that would be created is that the building would in many ways continue to deteriorate, and you would have tenants living in somewhat uncomfortable circumstances as far as the bathroom is concerned. And I guess I could also say, I'm perfectly willing to argue both sides, so. In some ways, the exceptional circumstances are that the 2 houses were built on the lot probably quite some time ago, and the lot is too small really for a split, especially considering that parking problems would accrue from a split if that were done, in addition to making 2 quite undersized lots. On the other hand, I guess you just have to say, what's the purpose of the code and why is that in there?
Or you can tear them both down, build a new one.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, in this case, tear it down and leave the one because...
Yeah, or add to the other one, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
How many bedrooms does the other one have, Steve?
I'm not sure the number of bedrooms. The occupancy is 2.
2.
It could be a 1-bedroom with 2 people.
It's a 2-bedroom house.
So
It's 2 two-bedroom houses. You could have 1 4-bedroom house on that property.
I'm going to put 4 people in it.
you can't put 4 people in it.
Oh, that's right. You can only have 3.
You can have a 4-bedroom house, but you can't have 4 unrelated
3
persons.
people, right.
Right, we can't do that.
Okay, you're right. I forgot. I just checked that out yesterday, too.
You can have a 10-bedroom house.
Just got a steel sieve.
You can have a very large family.
Because I need a variance for size.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something. Maybe this isn't the appropriate time to ask, but I don't think of it often enough to ask you under other circumstances. How many cases during the course of a year comes to your attention where there's more people staying in a unit than what's allowed by the code? Once, twice, 3 times a year, or never?
Who are you asking?
I think you're asking Steve.
Oh, I thought you were looking at Sean. I can be real candid with you. Coming up this spring, we'll have quite a few tenants who will be trying to get back their deposits and break their leases, and they will present to the Code Enforcement Office copies of lease agreements that list 4 or 5 people. And that would be the only way, though, that we would have that information. So in some cases, and in particular coming up now, it will be where there have been too many there and they've signed a lease, but they're trying to get some of their money back.
Where you legally have that information.
You're right.
Because people who live next door know how many people live there.
Oh, of course.
We all know that.
Sure.
A lot of times what will happen too is, and just from the other side of it too, there are a lot of landlords who very strictly regulate the number of people and are very diligent in posting their occupancy permit that's required by the housing code, that, the maximum number of people that's permitted there, you get a card that you're supposed to post at a rental property. Because if you have more than the permitted maximum number of people, that's a lot of extra wear and tear on the property. You know, vacancy is bad, overuse is bad. The code essentially, because what you've got is 3 people, pretty much in R1, R2 zones, 3 unrelated, you put in the same wear and tear as a family would on a house, maybe even less. But as you start adding the 4th person and the 5th person, and their friends come over, you know, it can wear a property down.
I'm just curious, I don't mean to be
It's not, it's hard to
argumentative.
prove, to be really honest with you. How do you prove it? If I would
That's
go
what
to the law
I'm
director.
thinking, it's a dilemma, it's not provable.
With what evidence would be required to prove in municipal court over occupancy? For example, if I have a lease, that's pretty much, and an affidavit or sworn testimony, you got a winner there. But how often do you get that information? Doesn't come up very often. On the flip side, to get back to what I was mentioning, if you've got a 4 or 5 bedroom house, but it's in a zone that only allows 3, I would think if I was paying the rent, my resources were limited, I would sure be looking at that extra bedroom, thinking how much that could cut my rent, without the landlord's knowledge.
That happens a
I
lot.
think that happens more than almost
So-
anything else.
I guess what I'm getting to, I think it's kind of a two-way street.
And if the landlord says anything, just my friend's staying over the weekend, what the heck?
Yeah, why do they have another bed?
Yeah, well,
Gotta have a guest room.
Yeah, extra rooms, though, for example, are nice for mom's weekend, dad weekend, Sib's weekend, friend coming over from another college to spend the weekend. It's really hard, to be honest with you. When does it become the person actually living there? You can stay somewhere and visit for up to 30 days. So,
Unenforceable.
is it a terrible problem in town? I'm not really sure, because we
That's why it
don't
scares me.
often have enough evidence to prove it. Does it commonly occur?
Yeah.
It probably does.
Yeah, what you're saying. but-
okay.
Can you prove it in court? That's
Since we're going to
very
talk about
problematic.
it, may I speak?
Yeah, Paul's an officer.
Since I do
Housing
the
officer.
inspections, that's one of the things we check for, and it's one of the things I check for every single place I go into, is to make sure they have the proper number of people in there. And again, sometimes it's hard to tell, but in my opinion, the majority of places have the proper number of people. It can, as he said, it can happen either way, but I would say offhand, in the average year, I probably write it up as a violation maybe 4 to 8 times a year. And I do an average of
Considering the number of
700
rentals in this
inspections.
town, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Now, that, again, it doesn't mean that I'm absolutely correct in every place I go to, and I know exactly, I can tell exactly how many.
This is per
Double
you, per
beds,
one inspector, or all
Couples living
inspectors?
together, all that sort of
Per him, I
stuff.
think.
But, yeah, that's one of the things we check for every time we go into every place, is to make sure it has the proper occupancy as best as we can tell.
If you get the wrong answer about the 4th bed, you know you're on the right track, you know? But a lot of times people say it's the guest room.
Right.
Well, okay.
Okay.
It is always noted, though, on inspections.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones doesn't apparently have any guest rooms in his house, though.
No, well, it doesn't look
There's
like
not
there's
a lot
space,
of
there's
room
no
for a
space for the
guest
guest room.
Sorry about that digression there.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's a
Rob.
hot issue right now, I'll just let you know that.
All right, well,
I think in some ways, almost the hardest finding to deal with is the question of privilege. Would it be a privilege for Mr. Jones to be allowed to do this?
Yes.
That other people don't have?
Well, other people don't have 2 buildings in the same.
Occasionally
No,
they
but
do.
there's several houses
We
around.
see
but-
them occasionally, this same thing.
Like the carriage house and the...
Well, in that case, then maybe there is no privilege. This
well, it
is,
isn't a common privilege to have 2 houses on the same property.
Yeah.
Well, so since it's uncommon, would it then be a privilege for him to be allowed to have 2 houses if others are not allowed to have 2 houses? We've had such cases
so.
before.
But look at it, the extent of the improvement is just a higher pitch, you know.
Yeah, so I think, if you come to the minimum
Yeah.
variance, you could say
Yeah.
it's a minimum variance, to me.
Mhm.
I'm kind of leaning that way. That's
It's the other things that That's maybe.
Well, how about the detriment?
I'm thinking it's a public health issue. There's some public health issues with the bathroom and the mold, and according to his letter.
I looked at the plan trying to figure out if there's someplace else to upgrade the bathroom. Don't like the bathroom off the kitchen either particularly. But would granting the variance be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties?
Probably wouldn't notice it.
Say that again?
Properties owners probably wouldn't notice it.
Probably not. Looking at the map, the adjacent it's really odd. It's another, we got the oddest zoning. But anyway, this is R1, every single, not quite, no, there's no B. Yes, there is B1, R3, M, and R1, all in that little corner. However, this part, will it impair the purposes of the code? The variance. What do people think about that?
Well, maybe as those two people who were here earlier, they're looking at a brick wall, maybe the neighbor's going to come and say that they're going to be looking at a high-pitch roof now, so.
Probably not.
This is twice as high.
Directly across the street, there's nobody who's going to be objecting to a
No, that's
high-pitched
the
roof.
HDL.
That's the HDL, it's the backside of the HDL. And the other is the same lot, but, and across the way, it's the house that's on the Dixon's house. It looks like it's positioned fairly far away, and their house roof is pitched similarly, I think, to what is proposed for this one.
I think it'll probably improve the looks of the building.
Well,
No question about that.
There's no question that it would it'd be difficult to not improve the appearance of that
Right.
building,
Just painting it.
doing anything to it. But whether we're supposed to be improving that building or just maintaining that building according to the purposes of the code.
Big difference between maintaining and
Improving.
Would it be in the public interest to
modifying.
modify that? Well, you point out the health consideration. That, yeah, that concerns me too. Well, we can decide whether it's a general nature. It's not a general or recurring nature, I don't think, such that the situation would be more reasonably handled by changing the law. It does occasionally occur, but it doesn't.
If I might, and you can just say I'm out of order if you'd like, but the purpose of the code's actually stated in the code. Section 230102 is the purpose.
Can you read that? How would you like to read that for us?
Title 23, the purpose. Title 23 is enacted for the purpose of promoting public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the residents of the city of Athens, Ohio, to protect property rights of all individuals by assuring compatible uses and practices within zones, to facilitate the provision of public utilities and public services, to lessen congestion on public streets, roads, and highways, to provide for administration and enforcement under Ohio Revised Code and common law rulings and to prescribe penalties. Health, safety, welfare, and general morals, and protect property rights.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That helps. Something I still don't know what I think. Practical difficulty, we dealt with that, of exceptional circumstances.
Well, what did we say about the practical difficulty?
Well, that he'd still be able to rent to two people. So the our determining that it was inappropriate wouldn't create a practical difficulty for the
And
owner.
an
But how
undue
about-
hardship. Would we create an undue hardship for him if we said no?
No, I'm thinking about the property here. It seems like the people who live in that place are experiencing something of a hardship with that bathroom from the sound of it. Whether that's undue or not, I don't know. But that's an exceptional condition pertaining to the property, in that house was, when that house was built, that lean-to bathroom, my grandparents had a bathroom like that down in Florida. I know the kind of bathroom that is. I thought it was kind of exciting when I went to visit.
Okay, so what did we say about undue hardship? What's that?
I've lost track now.
That there's an undue hardship for the people living there?
Well, we're not
Just
giving them the variance.
Yeah,
It's
it's
true,
for the
but I
property.
mean,
It's for the
for him to
property.
rent
There
the
is no
property.
way to improve on that bathroom in the
Sure
current
you could.
footprint. Well, you can't make it bigger.
You can't make it bigger, but you could retile it and recaulk it. and-
Well, the statement was that
Put it
the
better.
reason that it was a problem was because of the size of it. Can you
Well,
tell me anything about?
so it's small and
From
steamy.
a small
so you
bathroom?
put it in the vent.
I've never heard a small bathroom is
Is a problem.
described as unhealthy or
You can make it healthy by simply
absolutely.
ventilating it
I
properly.
mean, you might have to back up to get to the toilet, but it's there and it's functional and
Yeah, well, you could put a skylight too. I know of a place in Connecticut. that's-
skylights and bathrooms are very, very convenient.
Yes.
You don't have to turn on the light every time you clean.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
and then what did we say about something else?
well, I can't recall now what we said about exceptional circumstances. Did we determine that there were? Well, that exceptional circumstance.
I said you could argue that they are. I don't think that they really are. I said you could argue that they are.
You shouldn't argue things that you don't
The
believe.
exceptional circumstances be that it's in poor condition?
No.
No, that
I don't
there's
think
two-
so.
That's
Plenty of
right. I
Athens
just wanted to
houses.
get that on
No,
record.
I said the exceptional circumstance is actually why he's here, because there are two houses on the
Yeah.
lot, and that's not usual. And that to split the lots would create two lots that are tiny.
would need a- they would
And
need
it
a
would
variance
create a
also.
parking problem, because then this house would have only one parking space where it now has enough. It would no longer have enough. As I said, you may not buy that argument, but it is an argument,
I buy that one.
okay?
Um,
Would it create a privilege for him to have
Well,
two
now that's the
houses on the lot?
question. Well, he already has that privilege.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Is
already
ex-
happening.
So,
Would a literal interpretation of the code deprive him of rights commonly enjoyed by others? No. Granting the variance would. Yeah.
he would not be deprived of a privilege. The question is whether he has a privilege, or it would be extended to him by allowing him to increase the volume of his house.
Well, yeah. I think it would, actually.
Okay,
Okay.
I think we need to.
But we did decide that it is minimal, and,
The majority of homes, this would be typical of the bathroom, where you go in, you have a vanity this size, have your tub, have your
We can't hear you.
shower.
okay, he was showing me how the layout of that bathroom is fairly
Typically,
typical.
you have a vanity here, kind of door, you go out and you have your shower, tub. and shower.
Okay, I'm not
And that's
following.
a relatively standard
Right.
bathroom
Design.
arrangement.
Right. Yeah, it's small, but it's not that unusual, that's true. I have a very long skinny bathroom in my house.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we've kicked this around a lot. Do we have anything else that we need to, I think we've dealt with the minimum variance, detriment, and the general nature.
We've been through all of them.
We've been through all of them.
Right.
Twice. Okay.
Right.
Are we ready to vote? Would you like to start with Betty?
I really don't want to start, but I
Okay.
will start, and I will say that when I first looked at this, I thought, I don't see any problem with this. Why not make it a better little house? But I'm actually, because of the findings, going to say no, regretfully.
Roger?
No.
Michelle?
Yes.
Well, just because I'm just between all over the place and we still have a no, I will say that I think it would be a better house.
It would be better.
And it would be good to have a better house.
I agree.
So I will vote yes, knowing that it can't happen anyway. So
So what's the vote?
it's 3-2.
3-2.
No. So, and, yeah, I do hope that the bathroom problem gets resolved, though. It worries me. So, anyway, and we took care of our other business
We
at the beginning of the meeting.
We have another piece of business to talk about, too.
Oh, and that is,
The mayor wanted me to talk with you about how we wanted to approve this. I'm going to be taking a leave. I'm leaving for a year.
oh, okay.
So he wanted me to bring up whether I need to, whether we need to get this on the agenda next time, probably, since it's not on the agenda, and discuss whether you want him to appoint another person, which I'm saying I would like to continue once I
Right.
return, but whether you want a fifth person in my absence,
Well,
or
we
you
have a
just
fifth
want to
person.
struggle along with, or
Okay.
sixth person, or you want to just go along with five.
Well, that
Well,
would
for
be,
years and years, we had 5, so.
we did manage with 5 for a long, long time.
So we should put that
so-
on the agenda, Steve, for next
When
time.
does your term expire?
So I can be here until July, for the July meeting. After that, I would be unavailable till
The following July?
August, maybe September.
So, okay, for a year and...
So it'd be like 13 months.
13
The
months.
summer months is when we seem to have a problem with attendance.
So we, basically, he suggested it go on the agenda for the next meeting, so it can be a formal discussion at the end of the meeting, and then just
Okay,
say what it is you want, what they need to do. And I'll send a formal letter saying that I will be out, but I would like to be or just
You just like-
resume once I return, and then you all will decide whether or not you want him to appoint somebody in the interim.
if he has somebody...
Or just resign mine and you just put somebody back in.
Well, I think resigning yours shouldn't be necessary, but your point is that she'd be gone for an extended period
Well,
of time.
maybe
that-
somebody can finish your term and then she can come back.
Yeah.
you know,
There may be the
There's-
possibility,
there's other
actually,
ways to work it out.
the administration only recommends to council who's on the Board of Zoning Appeals. So a replacement, I think, I'm not an attorney, but I would think would be done by city council, not the mayor or the administration. And I think that would be a discussion, possibly even better before the city council, to ask them how they'd want to do it, because you're all mayoral nominated, confirmed by council.
Right.
So,
Well, next month, then, well, we could
Discuss
discuss it,
that.
and then send the request to council for a decision on what our preference would be.
It's just like this evening. We've got 5 council members and we have 2 extras.
right, you
And
only
if
have
we didn't
5.
have 2 extras, we'd have 4 council members.
Yeah,
That's
you have
why
four
we
members.
had, actually, that's why the second alternate or the 7th position was created several years ago, because there were many, many times where it was hard to even get 4 members out of 6. So with that extra 7th member, the second alternate now, you have more of an opportunity to be able to get 5, but even tonight's an example.
And it takes some of the pressure off if you want to take a holiday, why you don't have to feel guilty about
You don't have to be here every second
disrupting.
Tuesday at 7 o'clock necessarily.
Okay, well, next meeting, hopefully, we'll have another
A discussion about that
discussion,
and then
okay? And
recommendation.
then ask the council to consider what they will do. Okay, well, then if there's nothing else, then we're adjourned.